Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another video. Firstly, thank you to everybody who subscribed to my channel in the last week or so. It's wonderful to see some growth. I mean, Jupiter is in Taurus, so it's certainly happening slow and steady. Thank you so much for being here. And also to those of you who left comments in the previous video sharing in some of their Venus retrograde experiences. So I really appreciate you being here. And so at the time of when this video comes out, yes, Venus will have made her cazimi with the sun. And yes, she's still retrograde until early September. But one thing we'll probably start to notice collectively now is that some of the Venus situations that are happening in your life, either Venus retrograde sort of per se, or events to do with your Leo house in your birth chart, are starting to go through a slow recovery period, but still a recovery nonetheless. So for Venus at this point in time, she's now switched sides with the sun. And rather than being in the west and approaching her descent, she's now got her eyes set on the east, and she will soon be rising on the eastern horizon later this month, being August 2023. So like last week, we still have a strong Uranus thread. We had a strong Uranus thread last week, and we will this week too. So we have the sun square Uranus at 23 Leo Taurus. So that happens on the 15th. Then the following day on the 16th, we have Mars in Virgo trines Uranus in Taurus. So that's an Earth trine happening across 23 Virgo Taurus. And then on the same day, we also have the new moon in Leo, which also trines Uranus at 23 degrees Leo Taurus. So before we dive into the astrology of this week, I'd just love to take a moment to make a quick announcement. And that is the Golden Circle, which, if you don't know about the Golden Circle, is my astrology premium membership, which is nearly 4 years old now, which is hard to believe. But it's changing. Hello, Uranus. And when I say changing, I don't necessarily mean changing, but more so growing. So what's happening in addition to what happens each month, which is 5 videos outlining the astrology of the month, and there's calendars in a variety of time zones, different resources, monthly Q&As and things like that. I'm also going to be launching member-specific courses within the membership. So the members get to vote what they want to learn more about in astrology and astrology-adjacent topics. So as I said, these will be voted on by the members, and they will be released roughly quarterly, so around the solstices and the equinoxes. So the first one's coming up, which will happen on the Libra equinox. And right now with the current members, it's a bit of a tie between preparing for client sessions as well as an introduction to planetary magic. So I'm really looking forward to see what course gets selected for this quarter. And of course, if you would like to be a part of that, if you would like to develop your relationship with the moving sky, and if you want to get, space weather's your jam, I'd love for you to get inside the circle. And I'm really looking forward to expanding the material that's on offer there. So back to this week. So before I get to this week, last week, I was invited to speak on a panel discussion about happiness. So happiness in astrology. And so I had a bit of time to really think about what I wanted to say about this. And during the conversation, a really profound statement was made. It wasn't by me, but a really profound statement was made. And I've written it down so I don't muck it up too much. If you find yourself saying you're stuck, where does the fear lay that is preventing you from taking the next course of action? And that was just a light bulb moment going off in my own head. And of course, with the astrology that is ever present right now. So think about that. If you're stuck or stagnant in a particular area of life, if you want change, you want something new, fresh or different, but you find yourself saying, oh, but this, or what about that, all the whataboutisms. Really, that's your fear talking, because deep down inside ourselves, we often do know what is required, what we do need to do, but it's those sort of proverbial stories we tell ourselves, or our fears and phobias and anxieties often get in the way of taking that course of action that we know we really need to take. So we've just had that Venus cazimi that occurred over the weekend, and in my very small in real life circle, it was relationship issues that had been papered over were really being tested and revealed. So I saw 2 incidences of that over the weekend. And so when I think about relationships in general, Venus is retrograde after all. So many people, and I'm sure if you work with people in a very sort of interpersonal place, whether it is astrology, whether you're a counselor or in any even hairdressers, like they hear everything, right? So if you're in a position where you have these really deep conversations with people, you will really know the dynamics of this, that and even if it's your friendships, when people are, suffering from a lack of happiness in their own life, people, they tell themselves they aren't happy for, can be a variety of reasons. And what stops them from taking a change forward is, what if I can't make it on my own? Or what if I can't afford it? Or, the current economic climate? Or what if I grow old and alone? Or I don't want to start over again. I don't want to date again. Or who will love me at this age stage or financial position in my life? And whatever the thing is, that is really about fear talking. And fear is so much about what can keep us still or stagnant. In some cases, even from moving forwards at all. Sometimes it can be backwards. Obviously, for some people, fear can be a driving force that prevents them from staying stuck and stagnant. But a lot of people, fear is that sort of, I know my American friends would call that a deer in the headlights, but for us, we call that a skippy in the headlights, which is our nickname for kangaroos. So in any case, it's the fear that's talking. And so when we think about this being a very Uranus week, I can't help but think about the myth of Prometheus. I'm a big fan of Prometheus. I have a bit of Uranus in my own chart, so as we all do. But that, out of many of the astrological myths, is one that I really do enjoy. And when we think about Prometheus, was the Titan that rebelled against the gods and helped overthrow Kronos, who was a tyrant, tricked Zeus, and then stole the fire from Mount Olympus to liberate humanity. And at some level, we are invited this week to adopt the cunning of Prometheus and the trickster archetype of Prometheus, and, use that in our own lives in some way, shape, or form. And a really great resource, if you do want to understand a bit more about the myth of Prometheus, and that is this book here, which is an absolute gem. It's just a small book, but it's from Richard Tarnas, and it's Prometheus, the Great Awakener. I just picked this up on Amazon. It was, I can't even remember how much it was, but it wasn't an expensive book. So, I got that a while back now. It could be different now, but yeah, that would be definitely easy to obtain. So when I think about Prometheus and all of the aspects this week involving Uranus, what we're being invited to do, particularly just after a Venus cazimi, what radical change in our life do we need to embark upon and embark upon at some level? Where do we need to find our passion for freedom and for liberation? There's massive collective themes here too. Where do we need to defy authority? And this could be the authority of our own mind and what we think we should do with our lives as well. It doesn't have to be, overthrowing certain structures in the literal sense, although, hey, see what happens. But, there is an act of rebellion against some sort of universal structure that frees humanity from bondage. That's the myth of Prometheus and what that God did. So at some level, what do you need to overthrow in your life where you can find that liberation or some kind of freedom? Is it a job? Is it a relationship? Is it a way of thinking? Is it your fears and insecurities that you need to overthrow and just kind of go, F this, and kind of just, go for it in some way, shape, or form? Because Uranus is about transcending limitations. This is a planet we can't see with our naked eye unless we have some kind of, we need an intermediary, we need a telescope. I mean, yes, technically you can see Uranus very distinctly, or not distinctly, very with the distinct conditions, proper part in its synodic cycle, right conditions, right location. It is possible. But when you think we got through thousands of years of astrology and no one really called it, chances are, its visibility is actually exceptionally rare. So it's the planet that is beyond the ringed one, which is Saturn. So there's something about the great unknown with Uranus. It's something about angels fearing to tread. There's something about if I don't do this, I'll die. I'll die if I don't do this type of idea with Uranus. There's also this real peak creative and intellectual experience here, some kind of electricness of the mind, inspiration, creativity. There's a real excitement and risk factor too when we're speaking of Uranus and Prometheus. So, when we think about these ideas about, radical change, defying authority, transcending limitations, and finding or freeing ourselves from various forms of bondage, none of that feels particularly stuck or stagnant to me. So Uranus is a risk taker. And so we're seeing a lot of this in the collective space right now on many levels, kind of socially, with the arts, with music, with sports, politics, geopolitics, and the like. But obviously Venus is retrograde right now as well. And so in the sort of social, I guess, landscape, women have been really quite prominent in this cycle. When it began, I remember, waking up and, checking my Instagram, as I'm sure most of us do, and seeing all these things on Instagram saying, pray for Madonna. I was like, oh my God, did she die? She's also a Venus in Leo. But she got sick and the tour had been postponed. And this all happened just as, Venus, I think, was just about retrograde. And so I thought, oh no, is this what it's going to be about? Obviously she's recovering and all of that jazz and the tour's back on, but we've also had some really creative breakthroughs with women during this cycle. So, Barbie movie being one, some stuff's going on with Taylor Swift, Matildas, which is an Australian women's soccer team. They won a game. And, these are not areas that I'm really clued into, to be honest. I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, no offense. I've just never, it's not my thing, as you could probably tell. But, we can really see that women are taking kind of a prominent place in the collective sphere right now. I don't tend to pay much attention to what's popular. So yeah, that's the Venus retrograde thing too. But in my opinion, it's a little bit low hanging fruit. I think there's more of this to come from the perspective that, Jupiter is in Taurus, and Taurus is the yin sign ruled by Venus. And that amplifies and expands what it touches in the sky. And at present, Uranus and Jupiter are in close proximity to each other. So from collective cycles, when it comes to Jupiter and Uranus, we can see an 8 degrees is enough for those two planets to be considered, close enough to each other. So they're about 8 degrees at present. So August actually is the month of 2023 where they get the closest that they get all year prior to their conjunction, which happens in April. So Jupiter in a Venus ruled sign is amplifying a lot of these Uranian Promethean myths. So we really are seeing an expansion of Jupiter in Taurus with Uranus. And of course, the Venus retrograde is sort of a little bit more like honing in that sort of specific, more collective, generational outer planet type timing events. So when we think about that, when we think about the myth of Prometheus, we think about sort of, women taking the fire of the gods in a sense, which is what they're doing at the moment. You might like to think about this week how you can be that Promethean cunning person in your own life. How can you unstuck yourself from something that you've been stuck in for too long? How can you outwit those proverbial gods with your smarts or with your cunning or with your inventive idea or exciting plan? How can you take that path less traveled? So this week with the Sun square Uranus, the new moon square Uranus, but also Mars in Virgo trining Uranus, there's a sweet spot to find this year. And that sweet spot, this week, and that sweet spot is finding that happy edge between strategic planning, which would be a little bit of the Mars Uranus, versus the, in Earth. And Virgo is very strategic. I really do like the energy of Mars in Virgo, as well as that unexpected timing piece, that element of surprise, the new moon square Uranus. So this whole lunation cycle until we get to the new moon in Virgo there's a lot of potential here for liberation, for freedom, for the unexpected, for stealing that fire in your own life and using it to torch a path, to help you move forward, to help you make decisions that may be tricky, but your heart knows that's the right one for you. So a balance between, or the sweet spot between strategy and planning. And one of my favorite quotes, which is a Richard Branson one, just screw it, let's do it. Just kind of go for it if your heart knows that to be true. So that's a few insights to help guide you in the week ahead. I hope it's been helpful. I hope a little bit of a tap into the myth of Prometheus has maybe helped you think about the astrology in a way that you can apply that to your life. I'd love to know more in the comments below how you might unstuck yourself from something this week by taking that path less traveled. And of course, if you'd love to join the Golden Circle and cast your vote in this upcoming members course, the link will be below. I would love to have you as a part of that circle. And once again, thank you for watching this video. If you've made it this far in, please feel free to leave a comment or share the video with an astrology friend. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. So until then, have a great week.